So I recently read Paul's letter to the Romans, and it's one of those books in the Bible that really just stood out to me. It's actually the second time I've read it, and I don't know if I'm the only one when I say this, but I think I've read it passively in the past, but this time I read it, or more importantly, maybe Romans read me. I think that's why it stuck with me, which is quite an interesting way to start the video. And what I want to do is I'm just going to go over some parts that have stood out to me and really how this book has helped me. I think if you are watching this video and you too have read Romans, drop something in the comments that has stood out to you in this book, because when we look at Christianity in the modern day world, everybody seems to know Romans. Everybody seems to know a piece of scripture from Romans, and for me, I'd love to know why. I want to know, why is it that this book stands out the most? What makes it so special? I can only give you my points in this video, but I would love to absolutely hear yours. And I don't know what it was that drew me to read this a second time. I just came off of reading Proverbs. I then went on to First and Second Timothy, and then I guess I found myself back at Romans. And I guess the reason why I wanted to read it is I'm really enjoying these letters when it comes to scriptures. I find them much more intimate. You know, Timothy, for example, it was a letter from his father, right? And it's just a much more intimate a connection between a son and his father. And I felt like Paul's letter to the Romans absolutely gives us that. There's a lot of, when it comes to the Bible, it's especially in the New Testament, right? We're looking at Jesus, we're studying his life, and it's just this absolute depiction of perfection. It's like having the ultimate role model, right? And I read and I study Jesus' life and what he did in his ministry, and it's like, if I could just be 1% just like you, that's all I want to be, right? I just want to be Christ-like. And sometimes it's hard to read the Bible because it's like you're reading about perfection and you're reading about this standard that you could just never quite. There's no way that I could ever be Christ-like. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy enough. And sometimes it's defeating. On your low days, you're thinking like, I'm really battling with myself because I want to just be like you, but I know that I can't ever get there. And sometimes it's hard. But I found that by reading Romans, it was the context of this is Paul has written a letter to the Romans, and you can know that and you can understand that by the way that it opens. He opens it like he's speaking to a long lost friend, and he opens it like he is writing a letter. The thing that stands out to me about Romans the most is the humility aspect of it, and just the human aspect of it. I could tell that another human wrote that. And that's not to say that, the Gospels, for example, when it's scripture about Jesus, that loses any more of its significance. It absolutely holds its significance. But I felt when we read Paul's letter to the Romans, we can really tell that this guy was human and he lived among us. He was just a human, despite the amazing stuff that he did and the way that he was the rock of the church, as it were. So, to the point about humility and really just battling with it, the thing that I love about this is it's battles with the flesh. So you have the flesh and you have the spirit. And I didn't know this for a long time. I thought it was ego. I thought it was my old self. I thought it was the devil and stuff like that. I always wondered why I would know that something was wrong. I would know that going on my phone was wrong and scrolling for hours and hours and doom scrolling was wrong, but yet I continued to do it. And I tried to beat it out of myself. I tried to bully myself out of it. I tried to discipline myself out of it. And no matter what, I would always go for these days where I'd be fine, weeks, months even, and yet I'd always revert. And I'd find myself doing these things that I weren't meant to do, but yet I continued to do them. And it really, really bothered me. It created this bad relationship with myself, and it's only been through turning to faith and returning to Christ that I've actually begun to understand these, because what I'm speaking about there is the desires of the flesh, fleshly desires, which are hard to battle. We have lust, we have greed, we have gluttony, we have all of these sins of these battles of the flesh that we're going to face. And there's an interesting piece in scripture, I don't know off by heart, but Paul basically says, that which I not to do, I do, and that which I should do, I ought not to do. And I think to hear someone as righteous as Paul, someone who is, Paul is like, he's like the Christian Avengers, right? Like, he's just a really cool guy. Like, he was Jesus' right hand man, the rock of the church. And yet someone as awesome as that, someone so high up as that, is talking about things that he shouldn't do, and yet he's doing them. And I think just that bringing it down to earth and knowing that even someone like Paul is still struggling with these things, is still struggling with fleshly desires, it allowed me to build that connection. It allowed me to understand myself more. So again, this goes back to the point of when I was reading Romans, I wasn't reading the book was reading me. It was speaking to things like, Josh, I know what you do, and I've got some advice to share with you. So it allowed me to understand these things as well. For me, there's a lot of bravery in Romans. If we look at how this book was laid out and what the Romans played in Jesus' last few years of his life, there's a lot that was very flammable in the sense of it was a brave thing to do, to write this letter, to go forth and speak about these things. One thing in Paul's letter to the Romans is that there is a lot of declaration of God, of saying that, there's a lot of all glory be to God. And this isn't a letter in the sense of like Paul has came to us like, I'm a teacher, I'm this super important person. It's that humbleness. He comes and says, look, I'm doing these things and I'm writing this letter to you, but it is God that is our salvation. It's God. He admits his flaws. He admits his fleshly battles that he faces, and he's not perfect. But in doing that, he declares God as that light. So I think to go forth into a country or a place, a city at the time that wasn't quite as Christ-centered as it is now, I think was an incredibly brave thing to do. And what I'm taking from that, especially being on my journey, is that as I'm going into the workplace or as I'm trying to grow on my journey and the things that I want to do, gives me that courage to go in, to be immovable as a Christian, right? I've spoken about this before. Qualities of a strong Christian is being immovable. It gives me that courage to go into places where there may be sinners, to go into those places where there's going to be people that want to test me. And I too can have the same courage that Paul had when he was writing these letters. And it's that inspiration. This is just words in a book to some people, but to me this is a blueprint. It's giving me the courage to be able to go and do these things that I need to do. Because again, the declaration of God in this letter is so strong that it instills it in me. I understand that there's certain things that I physically can't do on my own because I am just flesh, but with the Spirit and with God I can do all things. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, which is from Philippians. And then a final thing, and I have to say a final thing because I could really speak about this all day, is this being an advocate for labour and sufferings. And one thing that I really struggle with, and God is working on, is my patience for people that have victim mentalities and are constantly making excuses to things. I look at my story now, and I literally just spoke about it in church today, and I look at these things and these times where I've suffered, where sure, in the duration of it, when I was going through it, it was painful, it was hard, and I didn't really want it. What I've come to understand is that these sufferings, these traumatic things that I've been through have become the basis and the foundation for how I've been able to change and see light in the end of it. And so when I speak to people and they're like, I can't do this because this happened to me, or because this happened, I'm a certain way. These excuses, I wish people could just get out of their own way and see that these things happen to you for a reason. And through our sufferings, we will see joy in the end. Because, for every dark night, there's going to be sunshine and rainbows. For sunshine to happen, it's got to rain a few days. And I know it sounds like I'm just reeling off these cheesy quotes, but I truly believe that when you do go through these negative events, there will come a time, by the laws of the universe, by God's grace, by just simply how things work, there will always be an eventual time where you look back and think, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So as much as it was painful, I've gone through it, and, I have to give thanks for it. I give thanks for all the things that I've gone through. It's been painful at times, but again, it's learning that our sufferings will bring us joyous occasions. Labour, for example, when you work hard and you're not idle, you will be rewarded for that. And I love that the Bible is a big advocate for that. I absolutely do adore that. So I think we're going to wrap the video up there. I've gone through just a couple of points. I didn't just want to come on this video and just read scripture. I wanted to go through what has actually impacted me. I think those 2 to 3 points, they've really sat with me. So I'd love to hear yours as well.